gentleman by the name of Dr. Marvin. Yeah. He's a great medicine, nuclear medicine. But he'll be telling a little story. He kind of connects the dots between the Rickards and the owner. And so I have no idea what they're going to talk about, so I'm just simply going to introduce the three of them and ask them to come on up, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. Okay. Thank you for coming to our presentation of David Alonzo and Elizabeth Purviance home in our current residence. At this point, I would like to introduce everybody that he's already introduced, so Marvin and my better half, Vicky. Let's see, at this point, I would like to turn it over to Vicky, and she's going to give a brief history on the home. So Dr. Marvin's going to speak on his efforts and accomplishments on this home as well. Then we'll do a slideshow following the rise of the Purviance home, and then we'll take some questions and answers after that. And again, thanks everybody for coming, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, so glad you all can make it, and I'm going to tell you a brief history of the David Alonzo and Elizabeth Purviance, their home, and a little bit about them. David was born in 1851 in New Paris, Ohio. His father was James and his mother was Eleanor, and they migrated here to Huntington County in the year of 1857. David was at the age of 6 years old. David's older brother, Aurelius, was sent off to the Civil War. When the Civil War was over, he came home in 1865. At that time, David and Aurelius started their dry goods and clothing business in our town. They also built retail stores and business blocks in the town of Huntington. So after Aurelius passed away, David continued doing numerous residents in our town, and he did that through the turn of the century. In 1874, David married Elizabeth McCackey, which she was the daughter of Samuel McCackey, and they had 4 children together. Their firstborn, they named Aurelius, and tragically died as an infant. They had Flora, Maple, and Donald Sr. Could we print that info up? From them, they had 3 grandchildren, Jean, Elizabeth, and Donald Purviance Jr. Donald Purviance Jr. was the owner of Majestic Fireplace and Furnace Company in our town. Donald had married Emily O'Hara in 1946. She was a wealth of information for the Purviance family. She actually kept all the information, all the newspaper clippings. So when we purchased the home, we were given envelopes with all this, most of the pictures and the newspaper articles, which was very valuable to us in our research for the home. And we never got to meet her, of course. I think she died the year before we moved out, or before we bought the home. But she did do her diligence on the house. So, okay, so in 1891, David started building our wonderful home. It was built by the Ufal brothers for the sum of $16,145. Yeah, and a lot of money back then. So, and it was completed in 1892. So David resided here with his family for the rest of his life. So he had, almost 40 years that he lived in the castle. So he had a lot of good living in there. And he was involved in civic duties, and he was a member of the Huntington Exchange Club, which was through the Huntington University. The club is no longer, and There is a book of golden deeds. Anybody familiar with the Huntington Exchange Club? Okay. So your dad was in there, right, Kim?
I don't know if Dad was, but I was a recipient of something eons ago.
Okay. So I actually went down to the university because I was told about this room at the university that had all the books of golden deeds in there. So because I was trying to locate a picture of David, we do have a picture of Elizabeth. But so anyway, I went down there, and I guess a couple of years ago they closed that area and they opened a bookstore in there. So the library now in the Indiana room has the Book of Golden Deeds books. So I went down there and was unable to locate the right year of book. I got help too, but anyway, but the books are there. So it was a good club for people that did good works in our town and good deeds and helped the community. So David was also a deacon at the First Presbyterian Church, and if you look at the right side of the front door of the church, his name is actually in the cement pillar to the right of the door. And the Purviance family went to that church for a lot of years. And Donald Purviance Jr. and Emmy, left the church due to unknown reasons. But it's a beautiful church if you ever get a chance to come in and visit. Kind of a neat thing to live right next door to it and have the memory of David and Elizabeth. So David was the leading dry goods merchant in our town because of his strict business application. He was honest and honored by the people of our town and our country and community. He was a friend to everyone. In his home, he was outstanding and said those times at home were the happiest moments of his life, sharing it with his wife and children, and of course also the friends that would come along the way. So in 1892, when the house was built, it was almost even with the street. So over the years, Jefferson Street, which Highway 5 has been graded to help with the hill coming into town. It's a truck route, so they had to grade it 3 different times, and so that changed the front stairs coming up to the home 3 different times. So if you look at the pictures, you can see the entrance. So that is why the house sits on the hill that it does, is because of the street grading. David died August 11th, 1934 at the age of 83, so he had a good long life in the castle. His wife Elizabeth stayed in the house till she died in 1943. Then the children sold the house in 1944 for $6,000. So, which is really cheap, right? Well, so you figure it was after the Depression and World War II had started. So, and you figure it had been over 50 years. So the house was probably starting to need some TLC as well. So the order of owners after Elizabeth and David, from 1944 to 1966, Ken and Karen Lind owned the home. They turned it into apartments. So each room had small stoves, refrigerators, large sinks, and linoleum floors. So it was managed by Turner Smith and his wife, where they lived on site there. In 1966 to 71, it was owned by Dale and Laureen Whirling. 71 to 83 was the Dr. Richard Blair, MD, and Joanne Blair and his family of 8 lived in the house. So they were the last known family to live in the home. In 1984 and through 91, George and Jill Emmerich owned the home, and they were wanting to make it a bed and breakfast, but for reasons unknown, why they sold. So from there, it went on to 91 to 92. It was Nicholas and Elma Tedeschi, and he had big plans. They also bought the Horseman School at the same time, and he had a construction company, so he was going to, build them both up, but he got in too deep and he went bankrupt. So in 1993, the city put an order of demolition on David Alonzo Purviance's home due to the disrepair of the bricks, windows, foundation, and then the vandals. The main staircase and all of the spindles, handrails, and posts were broken or missing. Graffiti was sprayed all over the walls. The stained glass windows were there was 5 of them that were never retrieved. They were stolen but not retrieved back. But then there came a miracle. It was Dr. Marvin Purviance from North Manchester. He's a true preservationist and didn't want to see the house destroyed. So he purchased the home, and he had hired a research firm to help decide about making it a bed and breakfast. So in 1994, the house was entered into the National Registry of Historic Places, and it also is on the Indiana Landmarks list. So at this point, I'm going to have Dr. Marvin Purviance, come up and talk to you guys about his duration of the home, because he's the one that saved the home from the wrecking ball twice. So he's a pretty important person, and so and he's just a wonderful man. So it's been wonderful working with him over these years. So.
Well, good evening. In the early 90s, I had a chance meeting with a musician at our home who was there, artist that lives in Huntington on North Jefferson Street. And she said she was on the landing between the first and second floors, and she said, "This reminds me of a house in Huntington that is in terrible shape and somebody needs to do something," and so on. And do you know about it? And I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Well, you need to talk to David Schenkel. He is a Huntington County preservationist, and he knows all about the house, and he's had several events trying to raise money to pay back taxes that were due, and keep the yard mowed and keep the vandals out and so on." So long story short, I investigated that with the help of David Schenkel, and we found that it was actually part of a bankruptcy in the Tedeschi bankruptcy estate. And of course, the bankruptcy trustee wants to know assets and liabilities. And this house was part of their property, and was considered really a liability, which it was. So we petitioned the bankruptcy trustee to grant an option for the sale of it, which was granted. It was a six-month option that was renewable endlessly. For I think $50 for the period, for the 6-month period. So during that time, I contacted a number of contractors to see really what it would take to get it back in shape. The problem was with the brick and with the slate and with the gutters. The original gutters had been galvanized metal instead of copper, and they had rusted out. And the walls are, I guess, 3 brick thick or so. And when the built-in gutters rusted out, the water run down between the 3 layers of brick in the wall, and the whole back wall had sloughed off into a pile onto the lawn. Anyway, it was determined by the city that it was an attractive nuisance and needed to be either fixed or demolished. So I had probably 4 different contractors look at it, and each contractor seems like I learned a little more about it as to the origin of the slate, what the life expectancy of the slate was, what the problem was with the brick. Structurally, it was sound. setting on limestone, of course. And so there came a time when the city fathers became restless about this endless option. And they said, well, you know, it's going to have to come down in 2 weeks. And that was in December, I think, of '93, probably. And so the last contractor to look at it was Atlas Industries from Wabash, which I had contacted them earlier, but they really hadn't gotten around to looking at it. So their manager was Pete from Elias, and he came over and looked at it and wrote a bid, and in there he covered everything that the other previous contractors had mentioned that I had learned about, and you know, each contractor had their main part that they were focusing on, and it looked like Atlas Building Services had it all together. So I said, well, city council meeting is in 2 weeks. You go to the meeting, and if you can convince them that it can be fixed, because they said it couldn't be fixed, then I'll exercise the option and we'll get started. So he went to the meeting, I didn't go, and he called me and he said, well, they're willing to let me fix it. And they wanted to know when I was going to start. I told them it would be 2 weeks, which would be January 1st. So January 1st, Atlas Building Services were out there draping yellow ribbon around the property. And it went on from there. And you'll see photographs here pretty soon of the major problems that there were. It had been open a lot. Vandals had been in there. The staircase had been beat up with ball bats, looked like. One of the first things that I did was gather up all the fragments that I could identify as part of the staircase or part of the other areas that had been destroyed, and boxed them up and took them off the premises and put them in storage. And Mark Wickersham, which you know, your economic development chief here in town, he drove by it about every day and checked the basement windows, which were repeatedly kicked in for kids to go in and look around. We did install some infrared night vision cameras, and several kids went through the court system here as a result of that. So the work that they did, first of all, the brick, it's built out of the same brick and at the same time as St. Mary's Church across the parking lot where the Biblos house used to stand. And I'm told that at the same time that they were pressure washing the brick over at the church, Richard Blair, Dr. Blair, who was a year ahead of me in medical school, was either sandblasting or sandblasting and pointing the brick. The brick people at Atlas said that the problem with the brick surfaces was that when it had been repointed, it was repointed with a hard mortar as built with soft brick. And when soft brick absorbed moisture and freeze, it expands against the hard mortar that had been replaced and sloughs off about a quarter of an inch of the face of the brick. So it looked like a building with chicken pox. So the brickwork that was done, about a third of the brick of the house were either replaced or taken out and turned 180 degrees, and the back surface put on the exposure side. So that was a long process. The back wall that had sloughed off, there was a big pile of brick back there, and very few could be salvaged. We found a factory being torn down in Elkhart that had basically the same brick, and we brought those in to rebuild that back wall, which included the sills on the wall, on the windows back there, and the lintels above. So that is really undetectable unless you really know what took place there. Some of the chimneys were truncated, tops were gone. The windows, there's about 90 windows in it, and those were all taken out and routed deeper so that energy efficient glass could replace the initial panes, and about 25 of the windows had to be totally remade. Of course, the gutters were replaced with copper, and slate repairs were done. The valleys were replaced with copper. And everybody kept saying, well, what is this going to be? What are you going to do with it? Well, I really didn't know, but it was a residence, so I guess that was the first choice. We did explore things like bed and breakfast and so on. There were a couple porches on it. One is behind the vines up there that had been taken off at some time in the past, and the footers that the porch, that the removed porch sat on, are still there, so you can really see what the porch is like. And there are other photographs that you'll see. The original photograph shows the porch. At one time it was, originally it was a one-story porch, and then later a two-story porch, which was right on top of the first-story porch. And inside it was, not much had been painted. It was mostly natural woodwork yet. As I said, a lot of damage. The stained glass window story was that George Emmert was concerned because people had been caught in there by the police taking tiles off of the fireplace panels, and he was worried about the stained glass windows, so he took them all out and locked them in a closet, and came back one time and the closet had been broken into and all the stained glass windows were gone. And at one point he got a call from an antique shop owner, South Huntington is all I heard, South Edge of Huntington. Some of you may know who that could have been. And the shop owner said, I think you better come down here, George, and look at some of the things I've got. And he went down and found his windows, except there were 2 or 3 that had already been sold, and those had never been located. The things that were taken off of the fireplace mantles, the story was that the person doing it said, well, you know, this house is open, and people are going to take stuff here. I'm taking this to preserve it. So they said, well, okay, you preserve it, and if it ever needs to be recovered for restoration, then we'll come and get it from you, which happened. And I found one part of the fireplace mantle in a lady's room in Magenta. So we did a lot of homework. There was probably one stained glass window yet that I know is probably somewhere up by Kendallville in the Blair family. But they've done a wonderful job of putting it back together. I'm sure I've left a lot out. If there's questions later, well, I try to do a better job at covering it, but that's kind of the long and short of it. The exercise of the option was for $1, and pay the back taxes, which is what he did. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys noticed the picture up front, but before you leave, check us out. It's the three of us, and we call us the dream team because it took Marvin's part to make the house structurally sound and rebuild the outside, and then for us to finish the inside. So anyway, we all did our part in doing what we needed to do to make the house a home again. So basically, so the 1/3 of the bricks were removed, he told you. The other third of the bricks that didn't get counted are the ones that we're dealing with now. So we've had tech pointing done several times since we've been there. And as he says, it kind of looks like the brick has chicken pox. So that'll be kind of something we have to deal with for years to come, but hopefully not too much. So in 2015 is when Alan and I came into the picture. Alan was looking at Old House Dreams website, and if anybody likes to get online and find a good website to look at old houses, it's a great website. So he was looking actually for a home somewhere. We were living in Denver, Colorado, and we weren't at retirement age yet, but he was looking for the future for a Victorian-style home with a lot of property, somewhere south and somewhere warm. So the day he was looking at his computer, and he called me over to look at what he had found on his computer, and there was a picture of the house. So anyway, we decided to come out and look at the house. Well, Alan grew up in Roanoke, so he knew of the home, but he had left in 1980. So we got out here, and we took vacations from work, but anyway, we got out here, and there was no HVAC, no plumbing, no electricity, no water, sewer, or lighting. It had been vandalized with water damage everywhere, something you might see in a scary movie. We spent hours in the house that day with Scott Darley from Caldwell Banker, and Alan was taking pictures and measuring everything, and I knew we were in trouble at that point because we spent about 4 hours in that house. And his brother, Mark Rickard, was the contractor. He's retired now, but he kept telling me, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. So anyway, we did it anyway. So Alan grew up in Roanoke, so he knew the house. So Alan's background, he was a chief engineer for LDA Realty, which is a company out of California, and they own and buy and sell high-rise buildings. So Alan was the chief engineer for that company, and he would do all their due diligence for all their mechanicals in the buildings. And so he was the right man for the job because he looked at that house as it was a big building and what he would need to do to make it a home and be able to make it so we could financially live there and heat and cool that house because of its size. So anyway, so we were hands-on through the project. We did most of the demo work in the house to keep our costs down, and we were unable to find anybody to help. Most people would come one day and they wouldn't come back. So anyway, we come back every chance we could. We had a cargo trailer, and we do a lot of our shopping in Denver, and we bring a truckload out. We finally found Scott Trainer, which is general contractor, and he worked on our home for about 2 years on site. And so during that time, he would manage the work crews, and as they would come in, depending on what was going on. But we used Summit Paint of Huntington, and they did all the trim painting around the windows, gutters, and metal outside on the building, because the outside of the building was in pristine shape. We hired Young Electric for putting all the new electric and panels throughout the home. We used Brockman Heating and Air Conditioning from Fort Wayne, and they did all our HVAC systems, which we put zoned heating in all of our rooms, so we only heat or cool the rooms that we're needing. So that helps keep our costs down. Plus we use our pocket doors, which they were all basically all broken, and so they were all stuck inside the wall. So, which was a blessing because they probably would have been spray painted or ruined. So the Sandman David Dean repaired the floors that we were able to save after years of water damage. We used pieces from the damaged areas to complete other rooms or turrets. Alan and Jimmy Starr rebuilt the fireboxes on the first level due to deterioration of the fireplaces. We made all the fireplaces gas except for one that is on the main level, which is wood-burning fireplace. Deluxe Glass from Fort Wayne did all the window repair. And Dr. Marvin had started, he had done a lot of that. So we made them double pane windows, and they also did our shower doors in 3 of the bathrooms that we have. Joe Funk and crew plus Scott Trainer installed all the new drywall. The walls that had too many cracks or dry rot, we demoed them and had new drywall put in, plus adding installation. We actually had dropped all the ceilings so we could put in insulation and then brand new drywall. The walls that were not too bad, we would patch with mesh and then coating to repair it. The house needed 2 new water lines, gas lines. The main sewer line was plugged, but we got it cleared after 2 times. The main staircase had only pieces left, either had been stolen or destroyed. There was enough of the railing and newel posts and spindles to have it replicated by Out of the Woods company out of Denver, Colorado. They used their CNC machine to replicate it. So we looked everywhere around here to try to find a woodworker to work on our staircase, but we couldn't find any, so that we ended up taking it back home and finding this gentleman. We designed our kitchen and worked our design specialist at Lowe's in Arvada, Colorado, and then it was shipped out here. The granite in the kitchen was put in by Christian North of CNC out of Roanoke, and he and Scott Trainer did the install on this. So we moved here in June 1st of 2017. At that point, we had the powder room done and then our green bedroom. So from there, we just started working day in and day out to basically every part of every piece of that house has been touched and inside. He might have touched everything outside, but I don't know about that. He's like a monkey in that outside. So it has been a labor of love for us, both of us, and we're still not done as we continue to work on the masterpiece. So that's what I have for you, and Alan's going to continue with his slideshow. And then after that, we'll do the Q&A.
So as you can see, this is how it used to be. Probably nobody here remembers this picture. Anyhow, this is what we did, we put a little slideshow together. Some show actual pictures from the early years. Some show the fall, what had happened and how we fixed it. So that's what this is. So this is a turret on the north side, well, it'd be the northwest corner of the house. So this is when Marvin, his expertise and crew came in and did this stuff. I myself would not do this. And this is how it looks today. This is the south side, faces the funeral home. So these are pictures probably from the 90s. That's how it looks today. This is the back wall that we was talking about earlier. That little black line is the drain line from the roof. I told you coming down Thursday. So he was having problems with the water system, the roof leaking, and the roof leaked bad, and it did a lot of damage in the house. So that's how she looks today. This is the north side, same turret that we saw earlier in the picture. You can see how it's fallen away up at the top, no cap on the top of the fireplace, and the bricks, no windows, a lot of issues, and that's how she looks today. Part of the scary movie she was talking about. There we are today. Another photo of the portico. No slate, a lot of damage. That's how we are today. The other side, looking the other direction today. So this is the main entry, front porch, above level, has no slate on it, in bad shape, and now how we look today. The underside, sporting was good. I don't know, it was good when I got on. I don't know if Marvin had to do any of that underneath, but we put the lighting in it, and then we put our tins in it, and that's how it looks today. So when you walk through the front door, this is what you walked into. This is our first trip in 2015 back here to take a look at this. So that's the main foyer when we walk in. And she's actually looking into what we call the tea room today. And that's how we are today. So that's original full pictures. When we came down to the museum here to try to find pictures of what it used to look like, and there wasn't a whole lot, but this was one of them. So the vandals had damaged everything, and this is what it looked like when we bought it. And this is what it looks like today. So just to throw out a number at you, what did it cost to build the house? $16,000. The staircase to replicate it, 195 spindles was $22,000. So somebody got to it. That's Elizabeth in the tea room. And that's the original picture to the tea room. That is how it is when we bought it. How it is today. So we spent 3-4 months in that room by itself, just sanding all the old paint off everything. Had so many layers, there was just a lot of destruction. The decorative walls on top were destroyed, and so we had to order those and drill them all out and put them all together and make the pattern the way it was. Let's see. That's just another segment. So our flare, we sanded it all down. I wanted to go back and paint it again. We painted it back the original color it was when the Purviances had it. Our flare was the wallpaper at the top and the crown molding. So the crown molding we put in kind of matched the original dental molding that was there. So that's looking from the tea room across the foyer into the living room area. So this is the living room area, and when she talked about taking the ceilings out, this is why. I mean, you'll spend way too much time, way too much money repairing. It's just as easy to knock it down, put new drywall up, and lace it. And that's our living room today. That's the fireplace, or the bar room, which at the time had all our stuff for the kitchen. So we had a lot of, I don't know, about 86 boxes or something that we got. So that's how it looks today. This is the dining room. That's an original picture of what it was when the Purviances owned it. This is how it is when we got it. And this is another picture of what it looked like. And this is how it is today. The mirror, you would think the guy who bought a house off this gentleman would say, hey, I'll give you that mirror. No, he didn't. But anyhow, we didn't have a wall big enough for it, so we had to be creative, and it worked out well. There was original door was on the other end, and so I just moved everything down and had a place for it. But it worked out really well there. All the fireplaces had a design to it. This one has a deer scene, but that's how bad shape they were. So I ended up taking the stuff off the floor of the fireplace and reused them on the top to finish it out, and that's how it looks today. Anybody want to guess what this is? This is going into the kitchen. So the kitchen had 3 rooms. The kitchen, where they prepped it, passed it through to the butler, and out the door he went. So that's the swing door to the dining room. Photo. You won't see me working, it's all her. But that's us breaking the walls down because I knew we were going to have servants, so we decided we wanted a bigger kitchen, so we took out the 2 walls. We had to get engineered beams because those were supporting walls and there was a lot of weight to it. So this is all pictures of what the kitchen would look like. So anybody thinking we're crazy at this point? Why do we want because he had a good realtor, he's right back there. These are just all pictures of how the bad shape the kitchen was. There's the pass-through. There's our kitchen, see, it's all there. See? That's it together. Just 2 different angles. So this is the back hallway, which is where the servants would have used. There's a back staircase, a back hallway, and passive doors all the way around. So they were never allowed to be seen out in that common area, both levels. So there's the spindles were all busted out by vandals. Another view of it. And that's it today. Another angle of it. So we got the spindles for $1. So we tried to save where we could. We shop at a store and all that good places like that. We got those for $1 each. And Vicky was kind of getting on my nerves at this time, so I thought, what project could she do? Pick those spindles. It took her like 3 months. So. That's the powder room that we called the powder room. I don't know what, that was a hair place at one time, wasn't it? And then that's it today. There's the mirror that's in the foyer. That's it now. And we got a beautiful piano, thanks to Marvin and Peggy, that came out of a basement of some home in Rowan. So I don't know, it's
1876, Hallett Davis.
Hallett Davis.
Piano, actually here before Steinway arrived to the U.S.
Yeah.
High-end piano.
Beautiful.
Been all restored, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And the piece on the right, that came from Restore, Huntington, Indiana. Remember how your grandparents had the thick plastic covers over them?
Yeah.
That's how it came. So, I just took that off the other day, didn't I? Yeah. So that's the mid-level looking down. That's mid-level looking down. That's on the second level, just at an angle. That's how we look today. Scary looking. That's how it is today. That's our little library reading area. Believe it or not, the Vandals did not destroy that wood piece of art work there. That mid-level was put in the 20s. That's not an original build, but they did that sometime in the 20s. Same with all that flooring was to the 20s. Now you can see the floors. That's the same floors that's throughout the whole house, but they're all warped and missing. But we saved what we could, we did what we could. That's what we did today. So we put marble in. It's cooler on the feet in the summer. There's about 700 pieces we put into the house. How we look today. This is what we call the green room. This is the first room we lived in when we moved out here in 2017. This is what it looked like, and this is how it looks today. This is, they would use it as a bedroom back in the day. It's our pool table room, but that leads out to the second level deck. And that's what it looks like today. Master bedroom. That's why we couldn't find anybody to help. It's work. But it shows we did take all the ceiling out. That's the fireplace. And that's the room today. And you can see the fireplace. That's what she talked about. We're still working on. We still have not been able to find somebody to make them or find something that would match. This is would have been another bedroom back in our day, but it became our master bathroom. And that's what it looks like today. So that tub's actually period correct. A lot of the stuff in the furniture we got is period correct. That came out of Leadville, Colorado, and it's 130 years old and weighs a ton. This would be bedroom number 3, the blue room to us. A lot of decay. This is the back of the house. Like when Marvin said, the wall had come down. A lot of this area was really bad shape. The brick, we actually took the Latin plaster off and left the brick. We did that in the kitchen as well, and the photo didn't mention it, but we took all the Latin plaster off and decided to keep the brick. And that's how it looks today. Bathroom number 3, which at that point looked down into the kitchen. Anybody in the insurance business before I make a bad comment? This is why they insure homes. It costs a lot more to insure if nobody lives in it because of this kind of stuff. They walk in there at dark and then fall through. And that's how it looks today. She talked about deluxe glass. They did the glass for the bathroom. Tile work is done by me. Back stair, when you come up that staircase, you come up to the second level, that's where the servants would go. This is how it looks today. And bedroom number 4, which is her lavender room. She had to have a lavender room. And that's her lavender room. Anybody know what that is? Hail. So we had hail damage on our roofs when that's hit. Yeah. So did we. So I don't know if you were familiar. This is how the roof looked and the coping condition of it. I'm sure you guys saw them working on the roof. They started a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving and they finished the following year in April. So it took a long time to put this roof on. It does have a flat roof up at the top with skylights. I think you put those in? Yeah, well. So this is just how it looked pre-hailstorm. And then I put a new roof on in 17 or 18. I can't remember when I did it, but I redid it. This stuff is a mesh you put down. I don't want to get to the technical sides of it, but it's a lot easier than ripping it all off and putting a new roofing down. You can lay this right over it. It's more or less on the maintenance. It's a maintenance item. So this is the new roof. So all new metals, all new slate. These are the same pictures. I just looked at her. So it's good for anybody wants when it's time to buy. It'll last 150 years, so. And a sunset. Oh, I didn't know that was there. Oh, that's right. Wait, I was just playing around doing a 360 up there. When you're up there, you're above everything but the steeple of the Catholic Church. And that's it.
Pictures, and then it goes in. These are like all the newspaper articles that were given to us. Some of them dating back from 1890. Feel free to come on up if you want. We may have any questions.
Is there any record when that was turned into apartments? My aunt used to live there, down in the basement.
Wow.
Her husband died by herself, so she moved in there. I remember going over there with my mom down in the basement, because it was on the basement across the street, the apartment.
See, I didn't know that they rented those rooms down there.
And they had apartments down in the basement.
Wow.
When they made the apartments, I don't remember why it said the original was.
It didn't disturb any of the original walls in apartments. They just used doors that were closed and locked.